The production of this video was made possible by donors to the Orchestration Online Patreon initiative. Please consider adding your support to the creation of free educational internet resources by visiting our Patreon page linked below. Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor, Thomas Goss, and welcome to the very last collection of website evaluations for the 2019 Orchestration Challenge. And this has just been a wild ride, listening to all these intros of this piece and just different takes on it and different interpretations and ideas of the general emotion of the piece. And it's just been a wonderful, exciting time for me. I always look forward to these evaluations, and this year they were a little disorganized because I was also wrapping up the audiation course, which went a couple months longer than I had planned. So I was actually planning for this whole process to be very, to take care of a lot of stuff ahead of time and for the process to be very casual, but it ended up being very compressed. But that's cool. So it's a very early in the morning here in New Zealand. The sun is just barely starting to rise, and I'm looking at Bernard's really wonderful score here. And throughout this whole series of evaluations, I've been not really complaining, but remarking on different sound sets, just because, when I originally started evaluating scores just on the internet in general, I would just read the score, if there was a score available, and just comment on how playable it was and how much adjusting it needed, and just ignore the sound set, because I already have the best possible sound set in my head, which is all my favorite orchestras from, different recordings and performances that I've seen. And I can imagine how they would perform any particular work that's put down in front of me on paper or on a screen. But I'm starting to realize now just like the professional importance of mock-ups, or maybe rather than realize, I'm starting to acknowledge it more and more. Let's put it that way. And it just has to do with getting work, really. It doesn't really have anything to do with scoring for, on a sound set for its own sake, or for, for imagining that the sound set is realistic in any way. But it does really help you. And since I started my whole internet presence here over the past 10 years, I have also gotten work just purely on the strength of the sound set, because of the people who had to make the decisions to commission me were not musicians, or they were not trained in the same way as me as musicians. So, and of course there are all these people who have, who I've worked with, who had to work off of a mock-up. They were great musicians, but they just, they didn't, they needed it for rehearsal or to rehearse their group or whatever. So anyways, I've been talking about it more and more, and this one is really, really well done. So just, congratulations, Bernard. It's I don't know if you had your sound set plugged into your app, which looks a bit like Sibelius, or whether you were just like, you decided to take the MIDI and convert it to a DAW and then work in that. But anyways, whatever it is, it's really well done. And now let's talk about the scoring. I really like this whole idea at the beginning, the which is basically a trill. I mean, you've got it written here as a tremolo, and there's probably no way to really do this détaché. The way that you got it scored, you really should be putting like a slur over each group of bars, because just I mean, without it, people are going to slur anyways, so you might as well do it. But technically, without the slur, you're telling the player to play every single pitch with a different bow, right? Which is not really possible. So so make sure to slur your measured tremolo or unmeasured tremolo, however it is. Just really always put a slur on notation like this. All right. There was one other little thing, and that is this right here. Um, if you are working with Sibelius, it's hard to tell. Like, some of the font here doesn't seem too familiar, but other parts of it really does. So, anyhow, you should figure out how to generate a natural sign, because GNAT sort of looks like the word gnat, right? So, or anatomical, right? So just figure out how to generate the natural symbol in text, and then do that instead of this. But however you do that, I don't think that this is really feasible, right? I would say, since you've got pizzicato here anyway, just leave out this note, because you're asking the player to change a pedal while they've got the continuing reverberation of the harp, right? So what's going to happen is the G flat right in here is going to change while it is holding its pitch, right? So otherwise, like if you're saying, well, maybe the harpist could damp right here, but that sort of cuts the nose off of the glissando, and then you got to change pedals here. So look, just don't even just leave this note out, right? Just have this sort of kind of sweep of texture and life and color, and then the harpist can damp sort of right around here. Okay, but leave out this G natural, because you'll hear the pedal change on this note that is already sounding. Okay, so that's my picky uh, analysis of different problems. Otherwise, really nicely done. We're starting with flute once again. We're seeing the flute start off in its register. We've got, here's an example. A lot of scores that I evaluated yesterday, or in the G evaluations, had, it said flute, oboe, clarinet, and it was just one of each, right? It's kind of single voice scoring on all the winds, and I mean, you do need to know how to do that if you have a small ensemble, but it just increases the elbow room when you trade off. Of course, in this case, we really have a lot of, the second player is going for a very long time on the same pattern, and then they are expected to continue on, right? So they're basically not going to get a breath for this entire page from right here, right? So what I would do is see if there's some way in this pattern where you can put in an obvious breath, right? Whether it's to have another instrument come in and kind of just cover for just a second. Do you know what I mean? Or bring in an instrument that it can trade off with, like, say, bass clarinet. Like a bass clarinet player or a third clarinet player could be covering some of these, right? And I did allow for triple winds, right? You could have the same orchestra that Ravel could have prescribed, right? So, double winds plus auxiliaries, or even just like 3 flutes, 3 clarinets, right? So that would be preferable, I would say, than to just kind of keep the players just going indiscriminately. Now, I mean, there are a lot of players who can just play continuous lines like this, but it's always nice to think about their needs. I mean, you are here, right? You are catering to how they're playing. Now here, I see a possible improvement, and that is just to keep the second player going. right? Because they're already on the note. Right here, you're having the first player having to jump down and suddenly cover, right? So it's better to just have the second player continue on and then trade off back and forth to, first here, second there, and so on. That's just a better way of handling that. Now, if everything is kept very, very soft and beautifully textured, and we've got pizzicato on the melody with a little bit of glockenspiel and staccato woodwind instruments, then you will be able to hear this, right? This little touch right in here, this really low flute scoring. But the clarinet is going to get in the way just a teeny little bit right here. But it's, if you just are resigned to having that bustling sound, right? And even the violas are going to cloud up what the flutes are doing, but it's okay. I'm just going to let you know that that's fine. What I would do here is give these notes, like give all of these lower notes to the second, and then have the first play this as a staccato, and then this up here, right? And just really divide those duties. And I think you would get the strongest flutes right in there. Now here, when you bring in the clarinets, that's it for the flute. That I mean, you get a slightly blended sound, but asking the clarinetist to play way, way, way back is, when it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So I would just say either bring up the volume of the flute a little bit here, or I don't know. It's this is beautifully balanced. Is all I'm going to say, and this isn't, right? In terms of the flute being so low, but it's still okay. I see this kind of scoring all the time in some French opera, French ballet scoring. You'll see very low flute blending with other wind instruments from time to time, and it's not going to be heard. It can slightly add to the texture here, but it's sort of it is just a little bit better than useless to a certain degree if you're being really kind of mercenary about it, which I'm not suggesting that that you be, all right, but just it's very subtle. I think that you should just do more here to acknowledge that there's a balance in your first clarinet player. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Then we've got clarinets and octaves with second violin and viola. So just being aware that clarinets and octaves basically produce a very pungent sound, right? It's got a kind of a slight twist to the sound. Not because the pitches reinforce each other, not at all, but what they do is that they stack their peculiar overtones above, right? So that's what you're hearing, that kind of twist in your ear. This would have been great for like a bass clarinet to come in. So give the second some breath. So if you had the second, start with the second, have the first, and then have the second player play for 4 bars. They can totally handle that. And then have bass clarinet come in and play this. And they will play an absolutely beautiful octave with the first clarinet, because they will be in the same exact register, right? So right here, we're kind of top of the throat tones going into the clarino register, the lower clarino register. And then if you have bass clarinet come in here and do the same thing, they'll be in the same exact written range, and that will mean the same exact register. And so you get exactly the same peculiar qualities, right? And you also give your second player a rest. So that would be one way of dealing with this, an alternate way of dealing with this. So oboe plus clarinet, getting a fatter sound here, sort of the Schubert sound. But it doesn't really matter that much because all of these instruments are doubling with the strings anyway, so that they'll give a very forceful kind of doubling, especially with the clarinets being so prominent. And then bringing in the flute above, that's cool. And just pretty much the same thing twice with a little bit of bassoon thrown in there to double the bottom of the clarinets. Okay, and not too many examples of very low trills. This is still okay right in here. Then on the next page, kind of just a continuation of that. And And yeah, it's all pretty doable. This lower trill down here, a little, I've talked about lower trills enough. And you're not to say that they're not graceful or anything like that, but they have a tendency to cloud what's above, right? Okay. And this is kind of fun, this little bit of flute right in here. And I love the way that we get the sudden contrast with the dropping out of the strings. That's all quite lovely. And then right in here, you're, here's where the sound set sounded at its best. I could really hear the unique qualities of the wind instruments here, and the horns plus bassoons sounded great. Okay, the only possible fly in the ointment is that the overtones of the horns plus the bassoons are going to cloud over these flutes. Now, it doesn't matter how loud you want to push this first flute, it is still not going to be able to compete with the overtones of these instruments. If there was a way to just continue on your first clarinet, right? It's not the positioning of any of these that is the problem so much as the fact that it's the dynamic that you go to sforzando right in the middle, right? So the flute will sort of, right here it's balanced. If the horn players are really paying attention, it's balanced. And then when you get to the middle of the hairpins, it will get really strong, right? And the flute will disappear and then come back in. And then of course this is just really fun, kind of returning to some of the ideas of before. So really, this is a great way to start this final kind of mega pack with 8 evaluations video. So let's just move right on to the next one. And thank you so much for entering your score, Bernard. And I think you would really enjoy our selection for 2020, and I hope you participate then. Our next entry is this hugely fun score from Isaac, and it's interesting. It solves some problems that were that have been presented by other scores, and then it also presents new problems, right? Or there are other problems that could have been dealt with, right? Okay, so let's take them one at a time. In the first place, I really like the way that the first oboe, is taking the the little alternating part to start off with, and you've got little seconds playing in the flutes. Okay, that's really cool. Um, all the same, you are asking the oboe player to go for 5 bars straight without replenishing their breath. So, I can see how you are, you kind of want to reserve this little part right in here for the second oboe. But this part could just as easily be played by the English horn, right? And then you could trade off bars, right? You'd have like first, second, first, or maybe second, first, second, first, second, first. Excuse me. Let me say that again. Second, first, second, and then first taking over on the melody here. Okay, and this being played by the English horn. Okay. Now I did make a pronouncement saying that you shouldn't split up your wins unless there were very unique. There was very unique scoring. So if you did that, then you could just boil down the oboes to one staff. And the same thing, there's really no reason why these flutes need to split their staff, at least in this on this particular page, right? So yeah, so here you're asking the first to go to E flat clarinet. Okay, all good. Um, you may be surprised though that like the players might decide, well, the second player should go to E flat clarinet. That's their specialty. I'll just take over the second player's part, says the first player. Right? So sometimes you just see like in situations where the E flat clarinet is used, you'll see like people just making compensating and taping scores together and doing all kinds of interesting things, right? So just so that the specialist on E flat will be playing the E flat, because like not every player is all that great at E flat clarinet. I mean, it's a question of like maybe all of them could be competent on it, but that's not the same as being stunning on E flat clarinet, right? And it's an instrument where you just really want somebody who specializes and is just a fantastic player to play it, because otherwise, just I mean, the player can be completely in good intonation and be expressive and everything else, but just not really sell it, right? Anyway, not to go on for that too much, but yeah. Now here's the other problem that I see is that this is just a tough thing to do on bassoon and just really be very perfectly clear and everything. People have been dividing this up by going first three notes for the first, and then the last four notes of each beam group played by the second bassoon, and I think that would probably be a lot more playable than just having the first just go ahead and chug along with this, right? And then you could just you could do that up to about here, and then just if you had to have the second bassoon play this, then you can just throw that in and have the first player just do their best on the rest of this. Okay, so just talking about texture, it all works pretty well. I mean, I thought it was, it's just about ready for the stands, like maybe some adjusting around of parts and so on and so forth. In a situation like this, you have to add, you have to have slurs on both voices, right? Above and below. Like you may have entered this as intervals and then split the intervals using the keypad, or using just selecting the lower voice and then changing it to the second voice. And then what you end up doing is losing the it doesn't, like you end up not having slurs on the bottom voice, but you have to have them. Okay. And violins, second violins, doing this right in here. Okay, so this all works really nice. I like this. I like the treatment of the melody. That's really fun. I like these just little bits of support here from these. It's a nice subtle scoring, and just a little bit of harp. So yeah, the harp should not be scored under the flutes. They should be the same exact volume, or the harp should be louder. Now, this entire thing, all right, is like I can see that you're just really obsessed here with balance, and more power to you. But I think you should just have a foreground and a background, right? Have all of your accompanying instruments that you want to have in this texture, have them be pianissimo. Have the foreground instruments to be piano, okay? Don't have people start with mezzo piano. Like, piano is already a big world, right? It is a big, just imagine this big bubble. And like on one very, very far corner to the left, over here on that bubble, we have pianissimo, triple P, and so on and so forth. And right in the middle is just P. It's this big, big universe of nuance, going in and out and everything else. And then right in the middle, we've got mezzo piano, which sort of blends and then kind of, if you think of a Venn diagram of forte on the other side, that's kind of where the two are in the middle. But it's not a step ladder. It's not triple P, then double P, and then P, and then mezzo piano, and so on. Don't think of it that way at all. Think of P as being your universe. Okay, all right, that's another that's another really questionable thing to say. Think of piano as being its own universe. And just like that, you can really do a lot inside that universe without having to like fine tune things so much, right? This should be pianissimo. This should be pianissimo, right? This should be pianissimo, right? And so should the bassoon part. Here, this should be piano, right? That will balance a whole lot better. And you could even make these little supporting guys into piano, right? To just, to give a little bit of oomph to that melody. Okay, so I won't belabor the point, but I guess I already have. All right. Yeah, like nice little three horn scoring. That's cool. This should be like the first and second should be in the first and second should be in the top, and then third should be at the bottom, and the third part should be the middle voice. Okay, and the second part should be the bottom voice in this kind of harmonic scoring. Okay, it's funny that this kind of gives the illusion that there are a lot of gleaming, glistening instruments, but there's actually scored very economically. And the same thing I could say would be true of Bernard's score that we just looked at. Okay, and this is really fun. This kind of high G. This is a very, very easy harmonic to play, and it sounds really great. Okay, a little hard to control on the intonation, but it's a really great sounding harmonic. Now we're bringing in the E flat clarinet for the second player. Okay, and we have the first flute taking over on this little bubbling alternating note. We've got our piccolo, first oboe, and just a touch of support here from the strings and bassoons for our melody. So let's see what happens on the next page with the E flat clarinet. And here on this next page, we've got the E flat clarinet's entrance. Okay, now this is a little bit deceptive because the part is written in C, right? And that is actually something that I could have fixed. Like, here's what it looks like transposing. This is why it's so cool to get Sibelius scores that I can actually edit on screen as I evaluate. All right, you can see it's the pitches end up pretty, a bit lower. Like written A is like the highest that a lot of orchestration manuals prescribe, right? So you can see that this is really not all that high for an E flat clarinet. So that makes a whole lot more sense to me visually as well, right? So we've got the E flat clarinet doubling flute, right? Which is, it's not the greatest doubling in the world, but it still works, right? And then you got the piccolo an octave above that, and you'll get a very, very, very bright sound from that. I guess it's A2 flutes, excuse me. I should have mentioned it with the oboes coming in an octave lower, right? With some help from the clarinets, and bassoon an octave below that. And it really just becomes more of a woodwind piece at this point because with some help from the horns and trombones. This is what's really cool about this. I would say that's like what's the most original part of this score, and that is just emphasizing these two beats here. That's something that I haven't seen yet, I don't think, or maybe one score. Okay, and then just a little bit of support. Like as soon as you add the strings to it, you immediately mellow out the wind tone, right? But while strengthening the entire orchestra. Okay, and then this dropout here is really, really nice. Nicely done. And you're just holding on to certain higher instruments like E flat clarinet, first flute, piccolo, and then an octave below the oboes. So that is actually a really nice, a nicely scored octave, I would say. And the flute will mellow out the sound of the E flat clarinet a little, but it still has a kind of a more brittle tone overall. Okay, and then of course just like adding some of these harmonic pitches right in here, or changing the interpreting the harmony as a line rather than as alternating notes is a better way of putting it. And this is all going to be fine in here. I would actually mark this piano crescendo, right? Rather than dealing with so many mezzo dynamics, right? Mezzo piano to mezzo forte is like blah to blah, right? What if this started soft and went to mezzo forte? Then you'd really be covering some ground, right? Then mezzo forte to forte is pretty common, you know. That's sort of getting out of, if we think of our bubble, our dynamic bubble again, you're getting out of this gray area and going into forte. So that is always a fun effect, right? Yeah, but yeah, here I would just like say, you don't have to use the dynamics of the piano score. You could be soft going into sforzando and then down to pianissimo. And this is a beautifully scored chord right here at the end. It's really nice. A good tutti chord to evaluate. So anyway, I mean, I'm really going quite a long time on these first couple of entries, but I'm just getting going, and I'm just full of beans right now at 6:52 a.m. So thanks, Isaac, for a really intriguing score, giving me a lot to talk about and a lot to think about. And now let's go on to our third of 8 entries in this last collection of website evaluations. Our third entry here is from the mysteriously named JNLD, and it's a cool little score. I'm just going to take it a page at a time, and we're starting right here with flutes, oboes, clarinets, and bassoons, and then timpani, and then strings. So basically, it's just a wind section, a string section, and timpani. Okay, so really a very very stripped down group, but that's all cool. One thing about this is, though, JNLD, and that is that how many flutes and oboes do you have, right? I mean, you would probably have 2 of each in a regular orchestra, and you could even have up to 3 according to the challenge that I put out there, the guidelines. And if that is true, then you can really save everybody's breath. Like, the player is just going to continue to play and play and play and play, and you can do things which you might have seen in other evaluations, which is sort of having players trade off bars, like, have the first clarinetist play this, and then trade off with the second clarinetist on this, and then the first playing that, and that way they can take a breath. And the same thing with the bassoon. This is kind of a lot of, I mean, it's playable, but it is not very elegant. And some players have divided this up by having the first bassoonist play the first 3 notes, and then the second player play the last 4 notes, and then they dovetail right on this note, right? So those are ways of getting around that. Yeah, but as we don't have a mock-up for this, but it would sound. It actually is kind of cool to start with clarinets and violas, I think, and we have just like a little punch right at the beginning. In order for this to balance, everybody should be the same volume, right? It would be better for everybody to be mezzo forte, and then diminuendo down to piano here, right? Because here you're asking the violins to go diminuendo, so that means here they're going to be pianissimo, right? And you normally would not put a diminuendo mark over dead space, right? Like they can only the strings can only get quieter if they're holding a note, right? So if they're playing staccato, there's nothing to hold. So there's no way for them to possibly get softer, because they're already going down to 0, right? By just going to rests. So this first stroke, I think this should be, it should all be mezzo forte, and then this could come in, and like all the instruments could be piano or pianissimo or whatever else you wanted to tell them to do. So here you're just kind of giving emphasis. Now these should all be the same, like it's just really confusing the way that you've notated these time values, right? they should all be quarter notes or they should all be eighth notes, right? But when you alternate between the different time values, you sort of mess with the player's head because the actual result is not going to be any different, right? What they are concerned about is counting, right? Anything you can do, like if this is just regularly a bunch of A flat staccatos in a row, then they want to know where the beats are going to land according to where the conductor is conducting. So it's in your interest to make it as regular as possible. So these should all be quarter notes or all be eighth notes, right? So that they can just look at a regularly scored part and know when and how to play. Okay? All right. Okay, now I think you're missing the E flat right in here. That was in the original piano score. Right, it's ba da 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 da. Right? There's the little E flat in there. Okay, so other than that, pretty cool first page. Let's go to the next one. And once again, we have just a regular, it's really strange. You're going eighth note and then quarter note. There's absolutely zero difference between, it's like you can't have a longer staccato, right? It's like, I mean, you can have a mezzo staccato, but that you would want to like notate it differently, right? If you were going to have the first one be really short and the second one be a little bit longer. If you wanted that effect, what you should do is have two eighth notes in a row, and the first one should have a staccato, and the second one should not have a staccato, and you should mark non-staccato, right? And then here you should put sim, and do the same thing. But this, like, it's just confusing, right? Your staccato, if it's all going to be staccato and it's pretty much going to be the same, then you should just have them all the same time value. All right. Now, here you are asking the players to go arco and then pizzicato. What I would do here is go divisi. Okay, this is possible. Da pluck. So the player would probably go up bow and then go pluck right here as the frog or the handle of the bow got closer and closer to the string. Right, so they could go up bow, pluck. Right, but it's still just fussy. I would say just have half the violas play and cellos play the arco part, and then have the other half play the pizzicato part. Right, and since everything is so soft, you don't have to worry about losing any fullness of tone. Right, it'll be perfectly fine to split up the groups, but it's better to do that than it is to just like mix arco and pizzicato one after the other over and over again. It's just I mean, it's doable, but it's just annoying. Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like asking them to do something, because you're not taking the time to write these divisi, and they might just decide to do that, right? If this is, say, like a semi-pro orchestra. But I mean, having said that, like a pro would be able to play that with no problem at all. It's just annoying, All right. Right, and then we're continuing on with a clarinet. You're doubling with flute here, and you're going mezzo staccato. I think that both instruments should have the same exact articulation here. This is neat, supporting the octave from below with the oboe. I think that that's a very, very cool texture. But here, like, if you're going to do this with the flute, you should have the clarinet do it as well. Yeah, and then just kind of the same thing in a different key on the next page. So yeah, so that all works so far. All right, and now we've got things getting a little bit more exciting here. Going into that, what I call that scrubbing part. Yeah, flute and clarinet on the same pitches. And this is kind of strange. You drop out with your flute, right? Just as things are getting strong. So you're actually going to feel the dropout, right? Let's say that everything is piano or mezzo piano, and you're going crescendo here, and then all of a sudden there's no flute. Did you maybe forget to put it in here? Right? That's just like there'll be less punch here. And once again, we don't know how many of each there are, who's playing what, Is this first flute, second flute? A2, right? Is this two flutes playing at once? Or we don't know. Okay, the cellos doubling the bassoons is going to be really nice. Okay. And I'm not sure that this is right. B flat, A natural, sorry, B flat, A natural, B flat, A flat. So da 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 da. Yeah, so this is wrong. It is all A natural all the way through. Okay, that's a strange. So it's almost as if you fixed it here, but you didn't fix it throughout the rest of the bar. So watch out when you're transcribing stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. All right, and then we just have these supporting parts, this B flat, A flat, going on under this. Yeah. Okay, not really sure if this works. I'm playing it through my head right now. Yeah, it's going to. I don't know if you have a playback on your particular app, but it's worth playing this through just so you can hear how this just simple A flat B flat thing interacts with this. Maybe you had intended these parts to be doubled from below, but you ended up copying and pasting something else by accident. All right, so that's all I'm going to say for that. Okay, so anyways, so this works great. Pluck, right? So pluck. That is really cool. Okay, yeah, that's really neat. Yeah, and once again, I'm not so sure that this is going to work with what you have got. I mean, it works in its own way, but I'm not sure that it's. I think that you had intended for these string parts to be doubling these other parts here, right? And see, you're just sticking with those B flat, A flat alternating notes, right? It's really kind of tight, pluck, and then so it's doable, but once again, it's yeah. So pluck and then going straight to down bow, that will sort of work. Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting that you're going A natural, staccato, and then A flat pluck, right? Which is going to sound a little strange. All right, just taking us to here with the oboe, really very low oboe and bassoon over. Okay, so just one more word of advice here, and then I'll stop because this is going into overtime or overscore past this bar. This should be reversed, right? You have the bassoonist playing up here, and I think that's because you want to slur up to this F. Okay, all good. But putting the oboe below the bassoon, right? Like this is really a low note. This is the equivalent enharmonically of B, and then C natural, and these are both difficult notes to control for the oboe player, right? In a semi-pro orchestra, you might get a kind of a quacking sound down there. If the player just doesn't have tons of time to practice, you might get just a very honky kind of a sound. Whereas if you actually were to give these notes just a difference of a couple of pitches, right, or a couple of whole steps, if you were to give them these E flats and then the E natural at the end, it sounded just as beautiful as you could possibly want, right? And then give the bassoonist this C flat and C natural down here, and it sounds perfectly fine. And it's a really beautiful blend of oboe and bassoon. Or you could have you just could have had both your bassoonists play this, right? Because you have got two players per part, right? Okay, so look, JNLD, I want you to enter next year's 2020, I want you to enter the 2020 Orchestration Challenge next year. Okay, and I want you to think about all those things, and the score is going to be coming from a completely different direction than this one, okay? And it's going to give you plenty of space to create textural elements. And so I really want you to think about using two of each, right? Like playing chord, like scoring out chords, having 8 voices going at once. or having the groups working together, like two flutes and two oboes playing with each other, right? Or oboes and bassoons working together, or clarinets and flutes working together, right? But in more than just one voice per part. All right? So think about that. And also, like, you had one timpani note for this whole piece right at the beginning, right? Could that have just been played by, like, maybe the double basses plucking the note really, really loudly, right? Or just same dynamic as everybody, but with an accent, right? Then you could just, the timpani player could just stay home, or they could just take the movement off and go read a magazine or something, right? So yeah, so think about all those things. All right. Wow, I'm really taking a lot of time on each of these entries, but it's really, really fun. So now on to our fourth entry for this collection of website evaluations. All right, and now we've got another score from Nick. Nick, it is always great to see your contributions, and you always have such really cool original ideas. And this score is absolutely no, it is no exception. So so this is interesting. You are setting up this kind of rotating um, trade-off here between the three trumpets, and I think that is just very cleverly scored, right? So you got, like, everybody gets sort of a stab at the same kind of patterning, right? um, and first you got the second playing the little staccato notes, and the third playing the pattern, and then the second plays the pattern, and the first plays the staccato notes, and then the third plays the staccato notes, and the first plays the. I think this is really fun. I think that the players would just really get, just find this really fun and amusing and everything else. So yeah, and then this all works great. So having just a touch of trumpet coming in here and playing this, and this is all really easy to control all the way up to that G flat. Now you don't need to. You don't need to emphasize the melody by having it scored mezzo piano at all. Okay, it will come out. The melody will leap out of the texture just fine. Now this is really neat. Trading off these little patterns here between the different instruments. So and they're all on the same pitch. Like English horn, of course, is scored in F, right? So that's the same pitches as this bassoon, right? This will be your concert pitch reference if you are not that great at score reading transposed parts, right? And it's not exactly the same notes as this, because here's where the pattern changes, but it is over the same range of notes, right? And then bass clarinet takes over, right? Trading up to English horn and then back to bassoon and so on and so forth. And you just kind of go around in this wonderful little daisy chain, right? And if you look at it, you see the pattern going through. Anyway, but it is all doubling the marimba, so it doesn't really matter, right? So you just get the different quality, and the audience will feel the differences in tone quality, in timbral quality, blending with the marimba going all the way through. And that is just a really neat register right in there of marimba, to be doubling these wind instruments. So that is just an awesome idea, Nick. I mean, it's, like I said, you always have great ideas in your scores. And this is neat, just throwing in A2 flutes above the below the glockenspiel, above where the trumpets just were. Right, so that all works great. Notice that this right here is like a 2-octave difference. Right, the glockenspiel is 2 octaves above the trumpet, so it's going to catch some of the higher overtones of the trumpet, and it's going to be a little extra kind of glassy and tinny. And here it's going to be a little bit more elegant, right, with the flute below it by about 1 octave. Okay, so that all works fine, and so like once again, just like a really wonderful idea, and like no strings have been used at all yet so far, right? And a great, like, it's a great functional use of trumpets as well, right? Like they're just being used functionally rather than like as like playing chords or playing always playing the melody or that kind of thing. Here they're just being used like as part of the texture, you know. All right. So now we've got timpani. Yeah, and this is pretty doable. That C is pretty darn high. So like you would want a piccolo, you'd want to indicate that you have like a piccolo drum head, right? So you have to think of the like as you go through the lowest timpani is the same as the highest standard one, right? Kind of covering the same pitches. So it's like that's the older style used to go D to low A, up a fifth, but now they go all the way down to C. But anyways, just think D to A below and then D to A above, right? So that means that the fourth, it's like the highest timpani is going to be on this, is going to be handling this pitch, and then in order to get to that next pitch, which would be the highest note of which would be middle C, you'd have to use the piccolo timpani. So anyway, but it's still doable. That is a cool idea. Timpani playing part of the melody, right? And then here, Nick is going down here to just like playing a D twice, right? And the ear will turn that into an A because it's easy to guide the ear around, right? So that is such a neat idea. And then here, of course, we've got the cellos hammering away the double basses. So here's where I would say you would want to go divisi, at least with the basses, right? Because this is, they've got shorter bows, they've got to cover a lot of ground with their fingering and everything else. And something like this is doable, but it's just kind of clumsy. So you might want to either completely simplify this, so you're just kind of hitting the baton beats, or just playing fewer notes per beam group or something. But if you really just absolutely have to have this more aggressive approach, I would divide it, like just have the same way that I was suggesting with bassoons that other people had tried. That is like first 3 notes for the upper divisi double basses, and then these 4 notes overlapping or dovetailing right on this note, playing the last 4 notes, right? And that would be a way to get it to be very smooth, right? Cellos can do this pretty much. Yeah, it's not the most elegant thing, but they're totally possible. Okay, and like the fun part here is the fact that this is harmonized. That is something that I've seen once or twice in other, but this is really kind of aggressively done, and it just really gives a back and forth kind of a feeling, and it is really nicely mechanistic too. Very cool. Okay, and then we're kind of going up to here, and having the timpani roll. This is the beginning of that, speaking of scrubbing, that really scrubbing part, right? And then I just really love the way everything is really harmonized here in the strings, and that is another really cool idea. And see, like this is just much more idiomatic to the double bass, rather than playing really furious patterns. And I like the fact that the trills are kept high right in here. I've been complaining about that a little bit. Not that they don't work, but just that they work in a different way than people may be expecting, and in a way that the sound sets are not illustrating. Yeah, and yeah, this is cool too. The snare, right? One thing that I sort of miss is any lack of percussive influence on, or excuse me, not influence, but support on like the very end, right after the trill, right? But this is nice slurring, right? So down, up. So that works really well in terms of the bowing. Okay. So and same thing, like you could, it just really is better just to get rid of this slur, right? So slur, so that's down, up, down, beautiful with the sforzando, and then diminuendo, and then just up on this, right? So it's better to try to have even, like if you're doing repeating patterns, it's better to try to have them as even as possible, and to always kind of like have the down bow on any kind of accent or sforzando or whatever, right? And then up bow just gets the bow right in position to hit this on the down bow again. All right, and sforzando piano, and continuing on, we've got this lovely harmonized, this little chorale here with most of the, with like the lower heavy brass and the horns. So yeah, this pretty much works. A little bit of fixing around I think needs to be done a little bit on this, but not much. So Nick, once again, great contribution to the challenge. You always bring something interesting to the table, and once again, I just am amazed and gratified at how differently everybody is interpreting this. Whether it is people who've got a ton of experience or people who are just getting started. You've all got some really cool ideas, and your imaginations have run wild, and the more different you are from my original interpretation, the happier I'll be, right? I don't want people to get the feeling like, oh, mine didn't sound like Thomas's at all, it must not be that great. Actually, that's wrong. Some of the most experienced orchestrators have submitted scores, as you may have seen by now, that are very different from mine, and are still fantastic. You know what I mean? So, and I'm not even saying whether or not mine is fantastic. You can. It's up to you whether or not you decide that my contribution sounded good or right to you. I cannot say, right? But anyways, this was a really great contribution that I can say. So let us move on to our next entry to the website evaluations, Group H. Now we have our fifth entry from Quetzal, and just to let you know, Quetzal, that this that your original score was fine. Okay, you had gone through and you had edited a bunch of things and sort of added like how many per part and everything else. And I'm just going to use the original score of yours that I already did the layouts for, and just add one little thing here. And that is just going back to regular arco bowing here. Okay. One of the problems is that you had gone through and added a bunch of A1 markings. Okay, so I'm going to just go with this one because it leaves that out. So as you might have seen in another in a couple of other evaluations, A1 is wrong. Okay, you want to do this. All right, and once I'll just explain one last time. Okay, and that is, let's say that you had two friends, and they always, like as a child, and they always came over, to play with you, and when you told your mother, hey, I've got my two friends are coming over, right? So that's A2. But if only one friend came over and you told your mother, "Oh, just one of my friends is coming over," what does that tell her? You wouldn't say that, would you? You would say, "Oh, um, friend, friend one, 1E is coming over or 2E is coming over," right? So you can't just say with one because that doesn't tell us who that is, right? With one, which one, right? So you have to tell us either player number one or player number two or with two, right? But don't say one, everybody, okay? I'm seeing that in so many scores. Okay, don't say one. Now here, unisono, just say two, right? And you can also just go like this. You can put two right over this, and get rid of that, and then just say two over the note or next to the note, right? You don't have to have a double note head. All right. So other than that, I actually thought that this was very cool. If everybody's playing very soft, right? Then Col Legno is going to work pretty well. Okay, it's just going to have this kind of tapping sound. You should probably mark this up to mezzo forte, or else it's not going to be heard. It doesn't matter how great Col Legno sounds in a sound set, because those are optimized and they're usually boosted in the mix when they're recorded. A realistic Col Legno sound is barely audible. All right, so and it's softer than pizzicato. Sometimes people, when people want that kind of sort of punchy emphasis, what they really are thinking of is pizzicato. But the Col Legno will work here, and it's actually a great idea because we're talking about a sewing machine, right? Which most people caught on. I kind of left that in the air for other people to kind of guess. All right, but all right. So 1, 2 simile. Okay, it's better just to have these just to score it in separate voices, and then you don't have to say one. You don't have to mark 1 and 2, right? If you have a rest underneath this beam group, and then you have the beams going the other direction, and then just this single note pointing with the stem pointing up, right? If we do this, and we go to, let's see, note input, and we go to swap, right? That's what you want, right? And then then the first and the second trade off, and you should always have the extra rests over the part, right? So that should actually be right. So it should look like that, and it should look like that underneath this, right? Just with a dotted quarter note to start off with. So that is how you would score that. Okay, and then this is really nice. Just these kind of floating B flats. Okay, that works great. And then I like this harmonized thingy in here. Harp is going to have to be marked up, and you do that, and that's great. Okay, this should not be mezzo forte though. I mean, yeah, this is just this. None of this needs to be mezzo forte. Just have the crescendo in there. It's strong enough, right? Only the harp needs to be that strong. Everybody else can just be soft, but adding force and then going back, right? Which is not the same as mezzo piano or mezzo forte. All right, it's just better to leave this up to the player, right? Better and like here, you should be adding this crescendo in here, right? I think the whole music should surge, right? Okay, but you don't need mezzo forte yet. Okay, and then here, this is really way out of balance, right? With you putting mezzo forte pizzicato and then forte arco in there, and not putting any markings in the strings to balance, right? So you're having this big, loud pizzicato right in here, and you have your strings just bubbling along at piano, right? So yeah, you probably fix that in your edit. So I'm not going to comment on these picky things too much, but just to let you know that this should balance a little bit more in terms of its scoring. Yeah, and so this should just you don't need to put the mezzo forte in there. It should just be piano balancing out. What if this was just piano, right? No mezzo forte markings except for harp, and this was mezzo piano. Right? or just piano again, right? And then you just let the texture make the difference, right? And this is fun once again, adding just a little bit right there at the end. Okay, and now we're getting to our scrubbing addition. Just one more little note from horn, and this is just it's pretty cool. Just like having the flutes take over and then play their little trills. This is not going to be as nice as you think it is, right? You're having triple bassoon family instruments playing a trill on that low D flat, right? The contrabassoon does not need to do that. You might as well just have them come in right on this note, right, with no sforzando. It's just going to be kind of. I mean, there are contrabassoons that can do that, but it's not really like the kind of thing that they do that well. And the same thing down here. You're having this really low trill. Okay, and I'll mention this one more time because I've mentioned it in other evaluation collections, but just in this particular evaluation, and that is that low trills, while they can be played beautifully smooth and elegant, they have a way of kind of unsettling what the trills above, right? So I mean, it can still sound just graceful and beautiful and everything else for the individual instrument or line, but like all of them stacked like that, all the way down to the very, very bottom, you get this kind of like slightly shuddering effect, right? Rather than just like the smoother trill that you might imagine that you were scoring. So extremely low trills like this, all stacked in a line, it just creates some problems, okay? It's more of a scoring thing than an individual instrument because there are a lot of players who can play low trills just really beautifully. Okay, so that's my 2 cents on that subject. Yeah, and then we've got unison trumpets playing a trill, and that might be also problematic. Just because they're so strong that, and if they're like playing on top of each other, like their pitches are just kind of fluttering on top of each other, it can kind of create a slightly messy sound, right? So I would, just to be absolutely cautious about it, I would have just like one trumpet trilling at any given time and give them some space, right? Maybe you could have strings around them, like, but like oboe and trumpet trilling on the same notes and flute. I mean, I guess if you stack it enough, right, it'll have a nice fierce sound, but I'm still not sold on unison trumpets drilling on that exposed note right there. Okay, this is all really fun, right? I think that works pretty well. This isn't going to be heard though. This is just, it can't compete, right? You're pushing everybody, all these wind instruments. You got trombones in there. You got horn going blang da 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 da, right? The harp is just going to disappear. It would have to be an octave higher, right? Would have to be, it would have to be a different kind of scoring for it to be like maybe a glissando or some other kind of thing that does not have to deal with with competition, right? Anything that the harpist has got to compete with, at an accent or something loud is just not a great idea. Okay, and then this is all fine. This is okay. And then you go back to Col Legno. You had a really long entry, and of course I can only evaluate the first 13 bars. And the rest of it was really, really cool too, and I'd have a lot to say, over on Patreon, if it, as a supported, as like supporting for a longer length. But anyways, yeah, just really nice. This is like the scoring is really cool. I'm just finding picky little things to say about this and that, just to kind of help you out with different aspects of scoring. But yeah, but don't say A1. Try. I don't know if this trill would really work with two trumpets on the same note. It just has a kind of a very fierce kind of like almost like a raspberry kind of a sound, if you know what I mean. Like people going like kind of making a sound with their tongue, like just those pitches kind of fighting each other as they trill because brass trills they're just so intense. You know what I mean, compared to wind and string trills. I mean, they can have a certain smoothness to them, but like both players playing at once, I'm not totally sold on. So, anyways, thanks so much for this great entry. We are just we're just really getting some great momentum here. So let's go on to our sixth entry for this collection of website entries. Our next entry is from Roy. And Roy, you left me a message asking you to forgive you for not orchestrating the entire thing. But if you read the guidelines, you're only supposed to orchestrate the first 13 bars. So even though you did your best and you tried to enter a full evaluate, excuse me, a full score, you didn't really need to do that. You only needed to do the first 13 bars, right, and make that as beautiful as possible. So and we were just listening to that mock-up, and I want to check something here in the mix, and that is, yeah, see, the horn is pushed really, really loud, and the harp, is about average, and then the winds are way back in the mix. Okay, so I see what's going on here. All right, so yeah, it's better just to leave the levels alone and to try to orchestrate to the levels. I would say that's probably a better way of dealing with this. Okay. So all the same, like in this case, you could have just not played with the levels and then had your harp at mezzo forte, right? It's perfectly fine to score the harp louder, right? But I really do like the trading off here. That's fine, and I like just the way that the melody was just kind of implied, right, by just hitting this F and that F there as part of the flute, and then having the oboe carry the little three notes at the end, right? So that was all pretty good. I really like that. It's a very simple, effective approach right at the beginning. I don't really see any big problems with it. And here, like we're seeing the clarinet being given these patterns, and remember how I was suggesting splitting up the bassoon into like three notes and then four notes, dovetailing on this note. You don't have to do that with the clarinet because it's just especially over that range, it's just very, very comfortable and easy to play, and it's all in the clarino register. Excuse me, all in the Chalumeau register, right? So that works fine, right? And then just so long as the clarinetist is really keeping to a balance with the first flute, this should work fine. All right, and this does not need to be mezzo piano then to piano, right? Yeah, like I think you could just leave out this, just completely leave this out. Just mark it piano, right? And espressivo, and then just put that in there, and then you don't need to worry about like saying, oh no, look, everybody is surging up to mezzo piano and back, and I just I want it to all balance perfectly. Well, I mean, it's not. These little hairpins aren't marked down here, right? So that's a little strange. So why not just let this be what's strong? Do you know what I mean? And if it is a little oboe solo, right? And this you could mark solo because it's kind of an extended part. So you could just say one solo, right? You're not really differentiating between these groups or telling us how much of each, right? Is this two flutes, right? It should be marked two flutes here. How many oboes is this? If so, if this is two oboes, then this should be one period solo or just one, and then just mark this piano espressivo, right? And then everything will balance perfectly fine. You do not need to do this kind of mathematics to make sure that it's going to turn out right. Here we get into some more intricate scoring. We've got To start off with, flute and clarinet at octaves, you are forgetting something here, and that is this is A natural, right? And in fact, you're putting in like A flat here, so this is all wrong. This needs to be B flat to A natural, right? Because it is a half step, right? And then that sets us on this whole passage, which also ends in an A natural, right? So starts second note A natural, ends on A natural. So you must have left that out. Look, our next challenge, the next challenge that we do here for the like in 2020, I will supply a like a template for the first, I don't know, dozen bars or so. It'll probably be the same as this, just like, orchestrate the first dozen bars till the change in the music. So I will supply all those notes. So, because I'm just noticing this was one that a lot of people got wrong, is forgetting to go to A natural. And there were some other errors that cropped up from time to time. I'm making you guys do all the work, and I should let the door open a little bit. And then, of course, just have the full the full template for the Patreon supporters. But I think I'll supply just the beginning in the future, just to help people out a little bit, so we don't have to run into those errors. Okay, and then you're bringing in the bassoons to double the second clarinet, and then all right, so 2A. All right, it should be the other way around. It should be A2. All right, because if you put in 2A, that means a seconda. Right? So that means the second, it's as much as saying, okay, so, this is the first and this is the second, and now you're saying the second part, right? Don't say 2A, say A2. All right? Very important. And I think that that's what you also mean here, is not the secunda part, but with 2, right? A2. All right, and now here you're saying 2 English horns trilling, 1 and 2 trilling, right? And maybe this is a copy-paste error, right? But do you have 2 bass clarinets, right? This is what you're telling me, is that you have, like, bass clarinets 1 and 2 are trilling on this note, and English horn players 1 and 2 are trilling on this note. So that would mean that, in effect, you have 2 oboists and 2 English horn players, 2 oboe players, 2 English horn players, 2 clarinet players, and 2 bass clarinet players. That is what that says right there, right? But I think you only have 1, so you don't need to mark it at all, right? Right? There's only 1 player on this staff, and he doesn't need to have his entrance marked, except for, like, dynamics. I would add diminuendo to this note, right? Or just like select it and type H. Excuse me. Shift H. Right? And because you need to match this diminuendo. Otherwise the trill will stick out, especially with the horns. Right? Now here you got it in the horns, but you do need it in the other parts as well. It should all match up. All right? Now this doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why are the violins playing softly here? Right? This should be forte. Okay, now you have this marking here, MSF, like mezzo sforzando, all right? Okay, this is all completely out of balance, right? Here you're going piano crescendo to mezzo forte in the winds, right? Now here you're going piano crescendo to what? It's not marked here. This is where the mezzo forte goes. Or if you really want to balance your winds against your strings, this should be forte, right? So there's nothing mezzo about this. This would be like fortissimo, right? Or just sforzando. You don't need to put in a fortissimo. The players will get it. They'll increase in their forte and they'll go bam, and then they'll back off. And the same thing should happen here. This should be marked, forte and then sforzando in the middle, right? Not piano to mezzo piano. I mean, look at what you're asking these, like you're telling the cellist to play really softly. Nobody's going to hear the cellos because the bassoons are going to be so loud. It doesn't matter that the cellos are an octave below, with the horns playing these trills and the bassoons being so loud, it's just is the wrong approach. And please do not write M sforzando, okay? That doesn't mean anything, all right? M sforzando. It's a sforzando is a type of an accent, right? So maybe in some more modern music they've come up with these terms mezzo sforzando or some other kind of thing when they are really trying to differentiate between very subtle effects. Okay, but that is not this kind of scoring. Okay, this is scoring in the romantic mode, right? So you should use romantic style markings rather than like. It's the same thing. Like if I would say the same thing if you use like a niente hairpin, which people are using sometimes, right? So like there's a little zero at it, and then that is really kind of like another textural, kind of more modern contemporary approach kind of thing. So you don't want to use contemporary approaches here, and you do not want to put anything in your score that makes the player raise their hand at the rehearsal, right, and say, "What is a MSF? I don't get. What is that? Does that mean like this or that?" And then they'll all have a conversation about it, and every minute that they spend talking about it is another minute that your work is not being rehearsed, right? So just put in try to balance things better and get things more in shape. Now this also doesn't make sense to me, is that you've got a Glock and a cymbal and timpani at pianissimo, right? Da-da-da-dum. But you're not going down to pianissimo here with the rest of the orchestra, right? You're not decreasing. By the time you get here, you'll be mezzo forte, right? So if you really want this all to balance, this should be mezzo forte all the way through, right? So timpani, cymbal, and Glock, and then here this could be forte, just a simple forte on the harp, because the harp has to balance up, right? And the same thing would be true here. Like this should be like mezzo forte or forte. Right, so there's just really some big balancing to do, and like cleaning up some of these dynamic indications and some other things. But all that aside, it's a really cool score, right? You should put in hairpins in here, like getting louder and then softer again, and the bassoons. And the same thing with the flute going on there. We're starting to see a lot of the same approaches in this second part here. But they are, it's still everybody's got their own way of really putting all the stuff together. So it's still strong. I'm really taking issue with a lot of your markings, but like the scoring is not too bad at all, right? So anyway, so thank you, Roy, for a great entry. And I'm pretty sure I've seen your entries here before. At this point I've got like about 100 names stacked up in my head, all the people who are participating, some of whom didn't get a chance to this year, but I'm pretty sure you've contributed in the past, and I hope you will in the future, because this is some really cool stuff. So so just check out a little bit more about some scoring. Don't write 2A, write A2, and you're going to be great. Okay, so thanks so much for this great entry, and now let's get on to our 7th out of 8 of these entries in the website collection. Number H, letter H. All right, so now we've got a terrific entry from Stephen, and wow, just like the mock-up was amazing. I think there might be one or two little wrong notes in there somewhere, but yeah, but it just I don't even need that mock-up. I'm looking at it, and it just has so much life and interplay and reaction and action and so on. It's so nice. So, look, Stephen, I'm going to teach you something about Sibelius here, all right? Okay, you select a note, you type Command or Control E to start the text. to add expression text, right? Now I want you to leave your thumb sitting on that command or control button, right? Leave it sitting there, and then type with your other hand, or whichever hand, P, right? And then you have a beautifully engraved dynamic mark, all right? This stuff in that Plantin font just does not cut it, all right? So you need to learn how to do this. It is just the simplest key entry thing in the world, all right? So basically, one more time, thumb sitting on the command or control key, then tap E, and then type whichever dynamic. If it were F, just type F, right? If it were mezzo forte, you could type MF as you hold down the command or control key, right? And then after that, you could type anything you want, without your thumb on the key. Espressivo, say, Okay, so, but it just, it does not make any sense to not know that when you are orchestrating as well as this. You are using the Sibelius notation software or application as well as you are, right? You should know that one little step, because these little these little regular type kinds of dynamic markings are just really kind of confusing and hard to read. Okay, all right, so I'm kind of used up a quarter of your time talking about that, but there is not a whole lot wrong with your score, or not much for me to correct. Okay, so this is a situation where we're seeing very limited orchestra. We just have like 5 players here: flute, oboe, clarinet, bassoon, and horn. So it's like a wind quintet plus strings. Okay, and there are a few things in here that might do with a little bit of changing around. Like, what I would do here is I would give this to the violas, just to have like a slightly, like, instead of having all of the same type of string instrument on the same line, give these two baton strokes to the viola, these 2 beam groups to the viola, then have the pizzicato in the second violins, right? And then have them come back in here, arco, staccato, right? And that's just because it's not that this is all that high on the viola, it's just is more apt, right? It's like this, if you're going to send them way up there, it's better to do it on violin. It's just easier to reach and is just more part of what they're doing, rather than having a very short string length for the pizzicato, right? Okay. Yeah, but like all of this trading off, dancing around, I love the syncopations and the pizzicato kind of, and like in the horn, like staccato, and the way that it all works together. These lovely little bits and pieces coming from the different wind instruments, and the clarinet kind of taking over a lot of the patterning, and then like these little staccato lines that run through behind and turn into the melody. That's just wonderful. Yeah, and then just using more of that. I think that that's nice. And then like having, like decorating the melody with the flute here. It is a score that uses less instruments and has more complexity and texture than a lot of scores with far more instruments going to town on this material. Then, of course, we're just changing. We're using some of the same kinds of things. This is going to be very active. Like at 75, not such a big stretch. That will be doable for the bassoon. But if you were to, go faster on this, that would be difficult, I think. Okay, and then kind of more of the same from the clarinet. So here you're going cello, pizzicato, and then you have this really high pizzicato note up here. Okay, that's really, I mean, it's just a bit weird. You're going to have a very short. You're asking the player to be playing these Fs, and then just suddenly leap up here to where they can reach this, right? And then be ready to play this pattern in here. That kind of doesn't work for me right here. This should be divisi, right? And once again, like, what's wrong with giving this line right here to the violas and then having the seconds play this divisi up here, just where it's just way more in their reach. If there was any way to do this with another instrument, right, it would just make a whole lot more sense. Yeah, you know what I mean? Because, like, yeah, I think that's just a bit of a throwaway. If there was some other way to do this, you've already got that D supported by all these other instruments, right? And is it like, I think this was one of the wrong notes. This should be D natural, right? As to sort of match some of these other instruments. You got so much on the D. Why not just leave this out completely? Right? Here's an interesting idea. Why not just leave this out completely and have the first violin just make this a pizzicato note? They could be going, down, up. Hang on, up. Hang on, I'm just trying to work this out. So, up, down, up, pluck. Right? That's how that would work. Or they could go down, up, pluck, and then go back to arco here. Right? But this is just way out there. Okay, and this should be switched too if you can do it. All right, but everything else works fine. Pretty cool. I really love this, just the way that you got this texture culminating, right? And then suddenly everybody drops out, and you just have this really straight line here with all of the violins playing together. And then you break it up, and the whole line becomes less important than just the texture dancing around here. Yeah, this works a whole lot better as a transposing score, right? And then you can really see where those horn pitches are sitting, and it's all really comfortable. Yeah, I think this score would also work really great transposed, like up or down, like down to C or up to D, and I think that it would just lighten everything even more, right? I think you'd have an even better, nicer, more resonant tone, which is really what you kind of need here. This score, okay, just to mention, this score could be done by a decet or dectet, right? This could be done by 10 players beautifully, right? Because it's very chamber-like. It does not need to be an orchestral score. I think you would get, like, clean up some of that stuff where you just have some awkward jumping around in pizzicato and so on. Clean that up and just let 10 players loose on this and see what happens, right? And just end up, scoring out the rest of it. And I think it just would be a fantastic, something fantastic for some local players to do. So really great job, Stephen. I mean, it's one of these things that just kind of begs for you to continue scoring in that vein and see where you get with it. It's just very original and interesting and colorful, and that's just really what you want, right? So thanks so much for this great entry. And now it is time for our very last entry to this entire set of website evaluations. Our 50th entry total. Okay, so here is our very last entry for this video and for the entire list of 50 website entrants for this 2019 Orchestration Challenge. And I mean, it's just really delightful. It's just a great way to send us out, Nice work, Luke. Yeah, and some of these things are just like perfectly lined up. We've got really functional divisi in our string parts. Two groups of violins, first and second violins, and cellos. Um, you know, we got the pizzicato underlining these baton strokes. We've got first flute with first violins, first oboe with seconds, and cor anglais with the violas. And those are all really good doublings. Now, here, a lot of people like to see all the notes, Luke, but are you aware that you could be doing this same exact thing with the glissando plugin and just basically giving us the very first note of the glissando, the last note of the glissando, and then just putting a line in between them and having all of the notes play in playback, right? And then it would also generate its own pedal symbol, right? So you could do that. Just look on Sibelius.com and you will get this. Let's see if I can get it to show up right here. Harp glissando. And I think I've mentioned this. Oops. Sorry, I should have selected two pitches. Right, so I'm not going to do this now all the way through, but just to show you how it would work. Right, we've got our end points, right? And usually don't play the last note. Then you just enter all the tuning here, like B's for flats, C's for hash marks for sharps, and then show tuning as a diagram. That's something that the harpists always want to see, and then that saves you just a ton of time, and you get you don't have to write out all these things, calculate how many notes there are, if it's all going to work out, and blah blah blah. You just do it very quickly and get it over with. Now, as to the harp scoring, it's nice. I would make all of these arpeggiated. That kind of does go without saying, but it really should be arpeggiated to kind of bring out these chords more. Otherwise, they'll get sort of buried in the texture. And you should be marking this up dynamically, right? So this should be like piano crescendo to mezzo forte, and then stay at mezzo forte with both of these parts. Okay. Now, you kind of have background and foreground elements here, and that's good, actually. We've got our clarinets and bassoons providing a pad in the background. And then you have got, like in the foreground, we've got our pattern, and we've got elements of melody and rhythmic support. Okay, and that's also done extremely well, Luke. I think you should be very proud of yourself. Like, most of this score just completely works and does not need to be fixed up. It's pretty much ready for the stands with some adjustments to things as I'm saying here. But yeah, this all works fine, and I like the fact that you're thinking about the bowing, down bow, down bow, up bow. That's really really great. And that keeps things very uniform for the beginning of each bar. And I like the way that you divided up these patterns in here. That's also very very nice. And then the treatment of the melody, we're seeing that kind of Christmassy, sort of cheery Yuletide kind of sound, combining glockenspiel with upper winds. And I like the way that it trades off, right? It's not just all the way through. We got glockenspiel with our oboe family members, and then contrasting with adding the flutes, right, with no glockenspiel, and I think that works great. With the piccolo, right, over the same exact pitches, right. Seeing as this is, it's transposing up 2 octaves, which would be the same as these pitches, which transpose up yet another octave, right. It's just going to be very kind of glistening and brittle up there, and just absolutely perfect to trade off with the glockenspiel. Then we get into maybe a little bit more kind of more of a basic approach. The oboes and the clarinets doubling, flute on top, the English horn on the bottom, which is kind of nice. Like just not just going straight to the bass clarinets or the bassoons for that bottom pitch, right? And I think that that keeps things brighter here with the doubling over the same pitches in the strings. And once again, we have flute on top. This flute is going to get absorbed by the strength of the string section and the other doublings below it, right? So you just hear kind of a radiance up here. It's not going to really stick out until you get to this mezzo forte, right? It's going to sort of emerge rather than necessarily being a very unique sound right here at the beginning. Sorry, my cat is snoring in the background. Okay, and then this comes in really nice. I mean, it would be interesting to add some sort of splashy or punchy percussion here in addition to the timpani. I love the way that this timpani is scored, though. It really does like absorb all those other pitches, right? Just on this low A natural. And kind of tricks the ear into thinking that the timpani is following that lower line. And all these trills are working great. I'm glad that you don't trill on the double bass, because as I've repeated many times, that's a bit much, just in terms of like confusing the sound picture above it. I love the way that you add this harmonic support in here. Even though, I mean, harmonic support, it's just a bunch of B flats going to a bunch of A's, but it really does solidify this, right? It just really adds just that much more emphasis. And I mean, it does harmonize in its own way, right? With the B flat with the D's being played by all these trills. So that's just a really great way of underlining everything else that's happening here. I feel it's it's great. It's simple, using the instruments in a very straightforward way. Bassoon on top, or first bassoon on top, second bassoon and bass clarinet in the middle, and contrabassoon on the bottom, and of course horn as well, doubling the top bassoon. So with A2, you're not really going to hear that top bassoon that much, but it will moderate the tone somewhat, right? I mean, if it were completely balanced, the horn would be mezzo forte here, but you actually want the horn to stick out a little bit, kind of like a little bit like a sore thumb here, just because it guides, emotionally guides the listener towards the end of the phrase, right? So, and to do that, though, you should put in a hairpin so that the player relaxes towards the end there. And then things just kind of coalesce and sort of die away, and we've got some horn harmonization below these strings, and they sort of slowly drop out, going into the next part. And it just really makes me wish that I could orchestrate, or excuse me, I could evaluate more of this, more orchestration from Luke here, and and see what else he might have done with this. But look, I'll just take a minute now to thank everybody for putting so much work into these evaluations. I mean, some orchestrators are very experienced, and for them it might be less work in terms of just like figuring out what to do, but it still is a lot to put aside, like, because they might be busy working on another project, right? But it means enough to them to put that together. And then of course, like people who are more in a developing stage with their orchestration or just starting out, you just have all my empathy, all my support that I can give you in this kind of a challenge, and just hope that everything that I said will help, just will guide you towards like better work habits, better ways of thinking of orchestral dynamics, and better ways of thinking of balance and texture and so on and so forth, and function, all those different aspects that I've gone over in different ways. And thank you all for contributing all of these entries, and and wow, wouldn't it be great if every one of our 75 entrants, our 50 entrants on on our website, amongst our website subscribers, were to enter again in next year's round next year's orchestration challenge, because it's just a great score, and pretty meaningful for me as well, to see that orchestrated by so many people putting in such great effort. So with that, I will close these website evaluations, just thinking, I could have done another 20, I could have done another 25. They were so enjoyable. Thank you all so very much.